So back then, I hit 25K a month running a one-man sales system agency. And today, I'm going to break down the exact roadmap that I used. First, the startup phase, what to focus on when you're at zero, how I delivered without working 80 hours a week, and when hiring helps versus when it kills your profits. This is something that I wish I knew before, so it would be a good idea to give you guys the actual roadmap so you don't make the same expensive mistakes that I made or burn out trying to figure it out yourself. So let's get into it. All right, guys. So for some context, I've grown the business a lot since. As you can see here, money in last 90 days. I'm going to filter out by last 90 days. So we've made over $500,000, which is pretty interesting. It averages out at like 500K in the last 90 days because last month was like probably the month before it was like the highest month. It was 181 grand, which is very, very good. But keep in mind, this is with like members, team members and stuff. There's like 11 people, right? But that 25K a month as a one-man operation, I like to call it operation, taught me a lot of things. I would say when I was like around that 25K a month solo, that was like the foundation of everything that came after. So if you're watching this, you can definitely get to that 25, 30K a month running it solo, maybe with like a couple VAs, but we're going to talk about it later because a lot of people that I actually know, I believe it was Aaron, I recorded like a podcast with him. He's a one-man agency, like a one-man person. He's pulling like 30K a month. Another person that I know I also recorded a podcast with him, who is Jesse. He's also at 30K a month, right? So you can definitely do it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just explain the whole thing, right? There's basically 4 phases, and I'm going to walk you through each phase, right? So phase 1, which what I like to call get systematic, not busy. So it's going to be from that 0 all the way to like 5K a month, yeah. Now, let me give you your flowers. When you're starting out, it's natural to think that you need to be everywhere, doing everything. I get it. You see like successful agencies or like fancy websites, all the tools that they use, perfect copywriting, crazy automations, and you think, I need all of that to compete. But here's what I've learned the hard way. That stuff comes later. Right now, you need to focus on one simple thing, getting a customer to pay you money. Just like Sun Tzu said, strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Which means, in simple terms, you don't want to be like everyone else's because everyone else is just focused on tactics, not the actual strategy. So you want to be effective instead of being busy. Now, Saad, what do you mean by being effective? Well, in those first few months, you want to first pick one niche, one service. For me, it was connecting recruitment agencies to companies that were hiring. Not AI chatbots, not complex automations, not 10 different services. Just building and selling them systems that would make them money. Now, the reason is because it's easier to become known for solving one specific problem than trying to be everything to everyone. Second, and this is huge, you gotta stay in that niche, right? Not after 7 days, not after 20 days, but actually commit to it for at least 90 days minimum. And I know this is hard because a lot of people actually get emotional about it, but I wouldn't recommend you guys do. Don't make the mistake of saying, maybe this niche sucks. Maybe I should try like e-commerce or SaaS or crypto companies. Stay there, okay? Just stay there. It's just a matter of time before you crack it. Every niche feels like impossible at first. Every industry has gatekeepers. Every market has objections. Every prospect has reasons to say no. That's not the niche being bad. That's just business, right? The Stoics used to say that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Well, what does that mean, Saad, in simple terms? Well, any roadblock you hit along the way, that's not the market telling you to quit. That's the market teaching you how to get better, which is good, right? Which is good. Because now, when you're looking at it that way and you stick with one niche for like 90 days, something magical happens. You start seeing patterns, right? And everything just becomes easy. So think about it like learning to drive. Your first week behind the wheel, every turn felt scary, right? But what happened after 3 months of daily practice? Well, you stop thinking about it, right? You stop thinking where the pedal was. You can start like changing lanes without panicking. You could have like a conversation while driving. You shouldn't do that, by the way. You can do like a slick turnaround like a F1 driver. So it became automatic, right? Another example I could give you when you start playing a video game, like a new video game, obviously you suck at first, but when you play more and you get better, now you want to be the best, which is, by the way, an interesting point. You can transcend that energy into business because business is a game too. And here's what I mean by that. In video games, you have levels, right? You start at level 1, you complete challenges, you gain experience points, you unlock new abilities. Business works exactly the same, right? Level 1 is getting your first client. Level 5 is getting 5K a month. Level 10 is 10K a month. Every level has different challenges, different skills you need to unlock, right? Different strategies that work. In games, you don't quit when you die or fail at level 1. You respawn and try again with what you learned. But in business, people quit after the first roadblock, which is like uninstalling the game because you've died to the first boss, right? The best gamers study the mechanics, right? In my experience, they learn the patterns. They figure out what works and what doesn't, right? They're obsessed with improving their score. Well, same energy should go into business. Learn the patterns, figure out what gets results, get obsessed with your revenue score, which is making money. Fun fact, I've never met in my life someone who wasn't obsessed with making money that didn't get rich, right? Give that some thoughts. So what I would recommend is pick your niche based on logic. Who has money? Then stick with it even when it feels hard, especially when it feels hard. That's when you are actually learning. Now, the third thing, I believe is the third thing, focus on getting the small wins, which means that first paying clients instead of building the perfect business. There's a big difference between having a client and having a business. Let me say that again. There is a big difference between having a client and having a business. This should be in a book. So at this stage, you need someone to pay you. That's it. Not 10K a month, not $1 million a month. Focus on the small win. Okay. And here's what I mean. Most people at zero are designing logos, building perfect websites, creating detailed processes and automations, writing SOPs for a team they don't have. Meanwhile, they have 0 paying customers, which doesn't really make sense, right? It doesn't really make sense. When I got my first recruitment agency to pay me, I believe it was like $3,000. I didn't have like a fancy CRM. I didn't have a team. I didn't even have like a proper website. It was just like a simple landing page. And I simply just had like Google Sheets, extreme amounts of caffeine, and a burning desire to prove this could work. That's all. That's all I had. And I wish I could show you like a picture of my old workspace. It was basically like a bed on a floor, a laptop, internet, and coffee mugs, and water. That's it. But that $3,000 changed everything for me, right? Not because of the money necessarily, but because it proved the concept. Someone actually paid me to do this. That validation gave me the confidence to do it again and again and again and again. So forget the perfect funnel. Forget the polished brand. Just focus on one thing, getting someone, one person to pay you money. Everything else is just procrastination disguised as preparation. Now, let's talk about phase 2, okay? So this is going to be phase 1. Now, let's talk about phase 2, which is going to be that 5K to like 15K, right? Which is going to be systems over services. Like, it is huge. Let me break it down, right? So, obviously, depending on how much effort you put into it, obviously this needs work. So, if you're consistent, you'll hit that 3 to 5K a month pretty quickly, right? So you'll have a couple clients, you sort of like understand how to replicate this. And now it's time for phase 2. Well, now since you're making money, right? You're gonna notice that delivery is gonna be the bottleneck. What's a bottleneck, Saad? Well, it's basically the slowest part of your process that's holding everything else's back. Like when you're trying to pour water through like a funnel. It doesn't matter how much water you have, you're limited by how narrow the funnel is. So right now, you should be charging more. I would increase my prices. I always say fewer clients is better than a ton of clients. And the reason why is because this comes from like an old business principle. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash flow is king. Most people think like more clients equals more money. That's not always true. Sometimes more clients equals more headaches, more stress, and actually less profit, by the way. And think about it this way. Would you rather have like 10 clients paying you $500 each or 3 clients paying you $2,000 each? Same revenue, $5,000, but with 3 clients. You're dealing with 3 sets of expectations, 3 communication channels, and 3 different demands. That's it, on your time. With 10 clients, you're juggling 10 different personalities. 10 different deadlines, 10 different ways things can go wrong. When you charge more, you're not just making more money per client. You're buying yourself time and mental clarity, which at this point you do need it. This is what they call like founder time, where the founder can actually think and work on the business, not in the business. And also, High-paying clients also tend to be more serious, more respectful of your expertise, and less likely to waste your time with like endless revisions. So instead of trying to scale by adding more $1,500 clients, focus on turning those $1,500 clients into $4,500 clients. So it's going to be same work, better margins with less chaos. The second thing I would do is have a clear onboarding process that you do every single time. Since now you've made some money, you sort of like notice steps where things went wrong before. So now it's time to refine, because when you had your first client, you were probably winging it. You're like, okay, what do I need? How do we start, etc. Just figuring out as you go along the way, which is normal. But now you've done this a few times. You know the questions you should have asked upfront. You know where clients get confused or where projects go off track. So create like a simple onboarding checklist. Mine was literally just a TYPEFORM form with the same 10 questions that I ask every new client. An automation that adds them to like a CRM. It was basically ClickUp, right? Which is a project management tool. And that's it. So the goal is to just avoid those oh shit moments, right? And look more professional instead of seeming like you're just winging it or like making it up as you go. So you come across as someone who has proven process. And clients feel more confident when they see you've done this before, obviously. Plus, it saves you time, right? So you don't need to think, you just do, right? You just perform. You just do the task and be the task. And by the way, it doesn't have to be fancy, just consistent. Same thing, same order every single time. So as you can see, we just fixed everything using simple ideas like raise your prices and have a clear onboarding. So it's not some crazy funnel, just focusing on simple, powerful ideas from all businesses that made billions of dollars. We fixed delivery bottleneck by simply raising prices, so fewer clients, same revenue, less chaos. We fixed the process bottleneck with a clear onboarding system to avoid confusion, right? Look professional, save time. And these two simple ideas solved the core problem of this phase. How to scale without burning out or delivering like poor quality. And that's what like Charlie Munger said, which is, by the way, like the greatest investor of all time. And he said most people don't use elementary wisdom, which is just taking a simple idea and taking it very seriously. Because simple ideas executed seriously create massive results. The pricing increase gives you breathing room to deliver better work. And the onboarding system ensures every new client starts on the right foot instead of you scrambling to figure it out. Now let's talk about phase 3, okay? So phase 3 is going to be, so it's around that 15K all the way, I would say like 25K, right? And this is where you want, like, you get this question of, should I stay solo or should I hire? So now you have a couple clients paying you 3 to 5K. Now you're at that 15 to 18K probably. Now it's about getting to the next level, right? Which means removing everything that takes away from the thing that usually makes you the most amount of money, which is probably going to be sales. At this point, you are the one doing sales. And by the way, I've done sales all the way to 100K a month. So you're always going to be doing sales until you break through that 100K, right? Until you break through the 100K mark in my experience. Now, the biggest mistake, and I'm glad I didn't make this, is hiring people. Because a lot of people say, I'm making good money, time to hire people and build like a team, right? That's wrong. Wrong move. I mean, I'm glad I didn't make the mistake. I just listened to people who were way more successful than me, which is, by the way, is the best thing you can do. And again, I'm going to quote my mentor, Charlie Munger. He has this concept that he calls learning from the eminent dead. Basically, instead of trying to figure out everything out yourself, learn from the people who already solved the problems you are facing. And he literally said, I believe in the discipline of mastering the best that other people have ever figured out. I don't believe in just sitting down and trying to dream it all up yourself. Nobody's that smart. So when I hit that 15K a month and I was thinking about hiring, I didn't trust my gut. I asked people around that scaled past 100K what they did. And everyone said the same thing. Don't hire until you absolutely have to. Stay lean as long as possible, because at 15 to 18K a month, you're not really ready for employees. You're barely ready for like contractors, because hiring people costs way more than you think. It's not just their salary, it's training time, management time, the mistakes they make while learning, the work you have to redo. And I see people like 20K a month and they hire like a 1K employee, and suddenly they're like stressed about making payroll. That 20K a month becomes 16K a month. Now they have double the headaches. Instead, focus on what I like to call intelligent delegation. Find the tasks that don't require your brain power and outsource those first. For me, it was list building and basic research. I found a VA that would do all those things for me, and instead of like spending 2 hours, like I would just pay them like $5 an hour, like $10 an hour. So my general rule is this: only delegate tasks that you can explain in 10 minutes or less. If it takes longer than that to train someone, you're not ready to hand it off yet. Your job at this stage is still sales, strategy, and also client relationships. Everything else can wait or be handled by someone else cheaper than you. And that advice probably saved me like $50K in hires, bad hires, or like premature scaling. Instead of trying to be smart, I just followed the playbook of people who had already won the game. And here's my mantra right now, by the way. Your ego wants to figure out yourself, but your bank account wants you to copy what works. So that's one. You remove the low ROI tasks. You don't hire fast. Stay lean as long as possible, because the goal is being a one-man agency, right? That was the title of the video. Okay, so now let's talk cash flow management. Now, you're going to notice that you're going to have crazy good margins with a sales agency because you don't buy anything for clients. You use your own infrastructure, right? Which is like the whole point of being a connector, right? You connect two parties using your own systems, using your own infrastructure. So you're going to be extremely profitable. In fact, last month I kept 89% of my margins. And I don't think there's any other business model that does this, which is why the connection model is actually genius. Think about it. Most agencies have to buy automation tools for clients, have to buy like domains, email, inboxes, sign them to tools, multiple cards. It's just chaos, right? And the profit is very low. Now, we are in business, right, to make money. You don't want to be like those e-com gurus who say, I've made $1 million a day. And when you ask them how much was profit, they say it's 20K. So whether you have 1 client or 10 clients, your costs are basically the same. Your only real expenses are your infrastructure, domains, email tools, maybe some VAs here and there for research. Everything else is just go straight to your pocket. But the trap is, because now your margins are so good, it's so easy to get sloppy with the money, in my experience. Because look, you're making 20 to 25K a month. It's tempting that you think you're rich. You see that money hits your bank account and suddenly you're looking at fancy software, investing way too much in infrastructure and tools, right? And I've seen people making 25K a month spend 8K a month on like unnecessary tools, thinking it's just business expenses. That's wrong. Just because you can afford it doesn't really mean you need it. And here's my rule. Save 30% of everything that you make. So if you make 18K, put $5,400 aside immediately. Don't touch it. There's going to be your emergency fund when there's like a big client that doesn't pay on time, or like when you have like a slow month, or maybe when you need to invest in something important down the line. So that's cash flow. Okay, that's cash flow handles. Now, the other thing that's going to keep you also profitable as you grow is documenting your system. So you want to start writing your processes right now, not just for future employees, but also for your sanity. Okay, there were many times where I had to rebuild a system I did for a client before, thinking, oh man, I forgot what I did last time. And I would just sit there trying to remember. Was it Apollo? Was it Crunchbase with all these filters? Did I use that? Did I use Make.com on NA10? And you end up just wasting hours recreating something, rebuilding something you already like built months ago, right? And there's this cool concept from military we can apply here, which is proper preparation prevents poor performance. Now in business, documentation is preparation. So you're preparing your future self to not have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And here's what I document, if in case you're wondering. It doesn't have to be fancy, by the way. First, my client onboarding checklist. Every question I ask in order takes 10 minutes to write down. It saves you like 2 hours every new client because you're not trying to remember what to ask for. Second thing, and every single time you crack a new win, you write down exactly what worked. For example, if you ran like a sales campaign and you cracked that, you want to document every single thing, the replies, the reply patterns, the templates that worked. And speaking of templates is going to be the third thing. Templates that actually got responses from prospects, not just templates, by the way, but notes on when to use each one and what responses rates you got. Client communication templates, that's super important, how you define your availability, and also progress updates. Basically have a checklist of everything that you do. Put all your systems in like a folder. For example, I used to use Make. For example, this is for sales, this is for outreach, this is for delivery. Now, your rule is going to be very simple. If you do something twice and it works, write it down immediately, okay? Because your memory is not as good as you think. And 6 months from now, you'll thank yourself for taking 5 minutes to document what worked. Think about it like creating your own operations manual, right? You're building a system that can run without your constant decision making. Now, once you have these systems documented, you might start thinking, okay, it's time to hire someone to run these. Hold up, not so fast. You need to pass the capacity test first. And here's what I mean by it. Before you even think about hiring, you need to be at 100% capacity consistently for 2 to 3 months minimum. If you're not completely booked, adding people just creates overhead without solving like a real problem, right? So don't hire when you feel stressed. Hire when you actually need help. There's a big difference. And Warren Buffett had this very interesting saying, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. In business terms, only when you're truly at capacity do you discover what you actually need help with versus what just feels overwhelming. Okay? And the general rule again is that if you're not turning away clients because you're fully booked, you don't have a capacity problem. You have a time management problem or like a pricing problem. That's going to be the bottleneck, okay? Now, Saad, can you explain to me the capacity tests? Well, for sure. You just want to ask these simple questions. Can you literally not take on one more client without the quality of your work suffering? Are you working 60 plus hours a week consistently? Are potential clients calling you and you're like saying, I can't start until like next month? So if the answer is no to any of those, then hiring someone will just eat into your like 80% margins without actually solving anything, okay? So remember, hiring doesn't just cost their salary, it costs training time, management time, the mistakes they'll make while learning, and also the mental bandwidth of having to think about someone else's work. So pass the capacity test first, then hire. Now let's talk about phase 4, which is going to be the 25K a month, which is going to be the hiring decision, okay? So it's going to be phase 4. So 25K a month and beyond, all right? So hiring decision. Let's talk about it. So now, when to hire Saad? Well, you've passed the capacity test. You're consistently turning away clients and you're also working 60 plus hour weeks just to maintain quality. Now we can talk about bringing people on. But here's the key, okay? Hire for your biggest time drain first, not your biggest headache. What do I mean by this? Usually something that's a big headache, and I know you will understand this. You can pretty much automate it. Right? You can pretty much just spend 2 to 3 hours automating it, or you can just get like a dev from like Upwork or Fiverr to build the automation for you. But don't hire emotionally. For example, if you get stressed about client communication, don't just hire an account manager. Also, don't hire a copywriter. Look at your week and ask, what task takes the most time that shouldn't? Usually just like list building and research. Okay, getting contacts, enrichments, etc. So that's like what, $500 to $800 worth of your time every week. So you can get a VA that would handle all of this for like $10 an hour. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of like my hiring hierarchy. Okay, which is basically for the first hire, virtual assistant for like data research work, someone who can build less clean data, do basic like prospect research. Is going to free up like 8 to 10 hours of your time immediately. The second then, which is going to be a second hire, a junior account manager for client communication, okay? Client check-ins, reports, managing expectations, but only after you have a proven system for this, okay? Third hire is going to be another salesperson, but this is usually way past 25K a month in my experience, because you shouldn't or you should never hire someone to do something you haven't systemized first. If you can't explain the job in a 15-minute video, you're not ready to delegate it, okay? And the most important thing is that your first hire should pay for themselves within 30 days. If you hire someone, you pay them like 1K a month and they don't free up your time, like it doesn't actually help you close more deals or like deliver a better service, then you've probably hired too early. Because remember, every person you add changes the business. You go from thinking just about yourself to thinking about like payroll, right? So make sure you're ready for that shift, okay? All right. So let's just give you guys a recap. So to the roadmap to 25K a month solo. Phase 1, 0 to 5K, get systematic, not busy. Pick one niche, stick with it for 90 days minimum, okay? And focus on getting that first paying client instead of like building the perfect business, right? Depth beats width every single time, all right? Phase 2, systems over services. Raise your prices to fix delivery bottlenecks. Create a clear onboarding process to avoid confusion. You can literally just copy mine. So 2 simple ideas that solve scaling without burnout. Phase 3, 15 to 25K a month. Stay lean and profitable, okay? Make that money. Manage cash flow like a real business. Save 30% of everything. Document your processes, all right? And pass the capacity test before even thinking about hiring. Phase 4, beyond 25K a month. Smart hiring decisions. Hire for your biggest time drain, not your biggest headache. Start with a VA for data work, systemize before you delegate, and make sure every hire pays for themselves in the next 30 days, right? The connection model works because of those crazy 80% margins. You use your own infrastructure, right, from multiple clients. So your costs stay flat while revenue scales. It's not genius. You can actually do it. It's not rocket science. It's just simple business principles executed consistently, right? Pick a niche, stick with it, charge what you're worth, right? Document what works, and only hire when the math makes sense. These are all taken from big companies like Berkshire Hathaway, Amazon, and every like billion-dollar empire since they used them for decades. Billionaires like Warren Buffett didn't build his wealth with like complicated strategies. He bought good businesses at fair prices and held them. Very simple. Jeff Bezos didn't reinvent e-commerce. He just focused obsessively on customer experience and operational efficiency. Again, simple. What I just showed you, right? Pick one thing, charge appropriately, document your processes, hire smart. These aren't like sales systems secrets. These are like just fundamentals that work in any business, okay? So the only difference is that most people think simple means easy. It doesn't, because simple means you do the boring stuff consistently while everyone else is just chasing shiny objects, okay? Let me give you an example. See, Ray Kroc, which is like the founder of McD's, he didn't get rich by selling the best burgers, right? He got rich because McDonald's had the most consistent systems. Same burgers, same fries, same experience everywhere, which is, now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually true, right? Every single damn time I ate that burger, it tasted exactly the same regardless of the location. So what you're building is consistent systems that work regardless of market conditions. That's one. Economic changes too. Whatever new trends pops out next week, which is the reason I stayed consistent in the way you guys see me and the way I've scaled my business, okay? I started this channel a couple months ago. I started at 40K a month. Last month I made 180 grand while sticking to the same business model without nerding out about MCPs, AI agents. I just solved what businesses wanted. Systems that made them more money. Everything else is just noise, okay? So hopefully you guys found value in this video. I'm going to leave you a couple resources in the description, kind of like my TYPEFORM, some of other stuff, right? So like I always say, get out there, take action. I believe in you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.